Welcome to Massey College. My name is Nathalie Des Rosiers, and I'm the principal of Massey College. Massey College is located on Indigenous land, the land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge the stewardship of the land and are grateful for the ability that we have to congregate here to discuss today human rights activism. Today is International Human Rights Day, and the United Nations want us to remember and to celebrate around the world what it means to believe in human rights and to act in support of it. And so today I am so delighted to have with us a fabulous panel to talk also about a country that we want to understand well and better, Afghanistan. So without further ado, let me just introduce my guest, and we can begin this program. I want to particularly thank Senior Fellow Nurjehan Mawani for the idea behind inviting to Massey Dialogue Mozhdah Jamalzadah. So Mozhdah was born in Kabul, and she's based in Vancouver now. She's a singer, songwriter, media personality, and a women's rights activist. People have called her the Oprah of Afghanistan because she had a talk show that really addressed some taboo subjects such as child marriage, violence against women, and divorce in post-Taliban Afghanistan. She also, she is very famous, and we're so proud of her because she performed at the White House for the Obamas on International Women's Day, and she was also a guest of Oprah Winfrey as well. She's won several awards and Best Artist of the Year awards. And last year, in October 2019, her biography, The Voice of Rebellion, and I know that we will be discussing this book, was just released. It's written by Roberta Staley. She's also started being her debut as an actress in a movie, Red Snow, that is written and directed by the Canadian director, Marie Clements. Links to Voice of Rebellion and Red Snow can be seen on the video description. So we invite you to enjoy the discussion today, but also go and watch the movie and read the book. It's a fabulous book. It's really fun, good. So as we always do at Massey Dialogues, we invite a junior fellow to present his perspective. Komin Qiyomiddin was born in Afghanistan, and when he was 4 years old, his family had to flee and went to Tajikistan. After a decade of living there as a refugee, they finally resettled in Canada. He had an advanced diploma in civil engineering and then began to be very interested in sociology. He has a bachelor's degree in sociology from Western and is now completing his master's degree in sociology at University of Toronto, and he is an incoming junior fellow, so it's so lovely to have him. You can see the brick wall behind him. That means that he is at Massey College, living here, as we all do in confinement. So, and finally, I want to welcome Senior Fellow Nurjehan Mawani. She has served as the Aga Khan diplomatic representative in Afghanistan from 2013 to 2019. And before that, she was in the Kyrgyz Republic from 2005 to 2013. As the ambassador for the Aga Khan, she really engaged fully in trying to protect and defend women's rights, and really upheld the vision that you had to cooperate with many people to do so. So His Highness' motto is human progress depends on human cooperation, and Nurjehan exemplifies that motto in everything that she does. Prior to being the special envoy, she had a very long and distinguished career in the Canadian Public Service. That's where I met her. She served as a commissioner of the Public Service Commission of Canada. She was an advisor on diversity for the Canada School of Public Service, and she was the chair of the Immigration and Refugee Board for Canada. She's been widely recognized for her incredible record of contribution to the public service and to the advancement of women. She's a recipient of the Order of Canada and an Outstanding Achievement Award of the Public Service of Canada. And she got an honorary degree from University of Ottawa and an honorary doctorate from the American University of Afghanistan. She is a newly appointed member of the board of directors of the Vancouver Foundation, and she has also been elected a senior fellow at Massey College, where she is serving as a member of the Anti-Black Racism Council. I'm very grateful for that. So let's start today. I just want to advise the audience, you can post your questions on the YouTube channel. We will get to your questions. And feel free to continue to engage with one another, but also don't forget to ask good questions of our panel. So let me just start with you, Mozhdah. Tell us a little bit about this book. It's a great book, but it's intriguing to have someone so young as you to write a biography, to have a biography written about her. Why was it important to have this biography written now?
Well, first of all, Nathalie, it's such a pleasure being here with you today. Thank you for the opportunity. This is great. I am a huge fan of Massey College, and I've actually planned before to go there, and then music happened, and I didn't have a chance. So I just wanted to tell you that. So this does mean a lot to me to be here. About the book, I agree. It's timing wise, I thought I'd be a little bit older, maybe more experienced, maybe have more experience. But since 2010, I have been getting book offers, and I held off. And I felt like this was just a good fit. It was this amazing publishing company that was based out of Vancouver. They have locations in New York, London, Toronto, Vancouver. They're just the most amazing people. It's always really important for me to be working with people that are exceptionally, kind and good. And this just happened. And of course, Roberta Staley happened to write the book, and I couldn't have asked for anyone better to write my story, because she is an amazing storyteller. I could tell you that even though it was my story, I would read parts of the book and actually start crying and get very emotional. And so she's done an exceptional job. But the book itself, I think is very important, and also is I want to say thank you for discussing Afghanistan today, because it is very important what's going on there. And the reason that I got into music, and the reason that I got into the entertainment industry in the first place is not for my love of music, but it was to be able to have a voice, so that my voice could be heard, or I could speak for those who don't have a voice. During the Taliban, I watched as women in Afghanistan suffered. I mean, the oppression they faced, the suffering, everything that they were enduring during the time of the Taliban, and then of course afterwards, it was just I had to do something, and of course I had to get out of my comfort zone and really get into music, and something that I wasn't even too interested in, just so I could have a platform to be able to do some good for the country and for the women of the country. And so this is why the book is important, because it tells my story, and I'm hoping that it helps other women just strengthen next generations maybe, and just the struggles that I faced, the obstacles that I faced. It's just something that you have to get through in order to bring a change, positive change. And so I thought that and this is basically what the book is about, is the the realities of everything that I went through to get to this level.
Well, it's a very, as you say, it's a very emotional book to read, but it's an important book for all women to read. It was interesting as we were discussing that women of all generations want to read this book and want to relate to you and to your experience. What do you think are you hopeful about Afghanistan?
Right now, if I'm being completely honest, there was one point where I was very optimistic and I was very excited for the future. And now with these peace talks going on with the Taliban, I'm very nervous, just as many Afghans are, especially women, especially ethnic groups like the Hazaras and the Uzbeks and, ethnic groups that are not really popular among the Taliban. So we're all very nervous and very worried, and I don't know how optimistic I can continue being during this time.
So today is International Human Rights Day, and I would describe your journey as being activism in itself, but also you chose a format of activism, which was, the talk show, the getting at issues that people don't want to talk about. So, there was lots of oppression around this, but is there something that you learned from that strategy? Well, I think maybe we've lost her. So let's move to Komin then, and hope that we can reconnect with her. So let's move to Komin, Junior Fellow at Massey College. I think we know about your experience in leaving Afghanistan. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Nathalie. I don't have vivid memories of Afghanistan. And, I almost remember nothing about the journey my family had to make from Afghanistan to Tajikistan. But my parents tell me that it was a quiet, untroubled journey, unlike Mozhdah and her family's journey from Afghanistan to Pakistan, which was a terrifying experience. My family first journeyed to Mazar-e-Sharif. It's a city in the north of Afghanistan. Then they moved to Termiz, which is in Uzbekistan. And then from there, they took the train to Dushanbe, the capital of Tajikistan. But the journey was safe. My parents tell me, so we didn't have much trouble in that sense.
In our earlier discussion, you were saying that your mother was following the work of Mozhdah. Can you tell us about that? Why would that be important for your mother to follow that voice?
Yes, definitely. My mother follows Mojdah's music, and she's my mother is also proud of Mojdah's achievement in terms of promoting women's rights in Afghanistan and her activism. Yes.
So what about your concerns about the future of Afghanistan? Are you concerned as well?
I must admit that I'm not an expert on Afghani society or Afghani politics, but one of the disturbing facts that I have read about Afghanistan is the high prevalence of child labor. At least a quarter of Afghan children between ages 5 and 14 work for a living or to help their families. And Afghanistan is a very young population. Close to 50% of Afghan population is under age of 15. And in comparison, about 16% of Canadians are under 15. And given this age composition combined with child labor and high levels of poverty, it's a worrying sign to me.
So do you think that obviously that prevents education from being fulfilled? And does that indeed continue to perpetuate the discrimination against women if you have an uneducated population Could we go so far as to say that it's almost willfully done?
Yeah, I think given that the high rate of poverty and child labor, I think I think maybe Nurjehan and Mozhdah can speak better than me because I don't have much information about what other
Well,
issues are. Yeah.
Well, let's bring Nurjehan here. What do you think, Nurjehan? You were so involved in defending women's rights. What are you still keeping up with what's going on? Last time we talked about this, you had expressed lots of hope. Are you still hopeful?
Thank you very much, Nathalie. I mean, I think there is a moment now where one can be, I would say, cautiously optimistic. It's a very critical time in Afghanistan's history. And there are certain developments and certain factors right now that I think give one cause for this cautious optimism. And I can speak a little bit more to that. But I would say that to Qiyomiddin, to Komin Qiyomiddin, that we are looking at, if you say that about child labor, we are talking about child marriages. Yes, I think that's a concern in Afghanistan. It's a concern in so many of the poorer countries of the world and the developing countries. But there is, where I would probably have a slightly different view, having lived there for almost 7 years, is that the impetus for education and the enthusiasm for education is very strong. And if we really think about the fact that there were no girls in school during the Taliban period, and then you see that from 2002 to now, we have almost 8 million girls in school. So there has been a huge shift in that. Now, the most important thing is to sustain that. And how does one make sure that that is sustained? How does one make sure that the progress that has been made? And I think here I would like to remind our Canadian audience that Canada has played a really important role in the promotion of women's rights, women's political participation, women's access to health services, women's education, women's economic empowerment, strengthening civil society, and strengthening institutional capacity. So over the years, there has been a lot of progress. I think what Mozhdah was saying earlier, and I'll let her speak for herself, was that the events around the peace process have been those that have caused many people concerns. That will these gains that have been made be secure? Will they be safeguarded, or will they awash to a situation that the country was in before?
So what should we be watching for then? What are the gains that you want to see crystallized and protected, and how? Is it through constitutional amendment? Is it through legislation? Is it through investment? Is it just that the schools for girls remain open? What are you looking for reassurance?
I think we're looking at multiple inputs. There is not a single intervention which will work. So I think smart strategic investments, certainly those will be important. But I'd say that if we are talking of human rights today, on International Human Rights Day, then the first most important thing is a cessation of violence. We have had in Afghanistan civilian deaths at an all-time high. Now, it does happen in other situations where, as part of a peace negotiations or a peace process, you do find an escalation in violence. partly because people want to come to the table with strong hands. So that's not necessarily unusual, but this is it is very hard, I think, for Afghans to have a confidence in a peace process and negotiations when they see this level of violence. Number one. And number two is that it does mean on a continuing basis that there is an erosion of human rights, but there is an erosion of all the gains that we've just talked about. Poverty is exacerbated. We are talking of all the things that we know will cause further issues. So what is it that we can do? Where is this cautious optimism that I talked about? Where is that sense, glimmer of hope? And I would say that there are a few things that are happening at this time. First of all, it's quite unprecedented, but we have women participating in the negotiating team in Doha. I think that is not insignificant, and I think I've said this before in an earlier dialogue, that when you had no women, girls in school, and now you have women in parliament, women ambassadors, women in government, senior positions, and we have women at the negotiating table. This is really important. So their voices. I think it's also important that it is broad-based. It must be inclusive, because if it isn't, it will not be sustainable. And the international community, this is, I think, if I may bring in the international community, including Canada, in the Geneva conference in November, which is with the conference on Afghanistan, the international community has continued to demonstrate its support for Afghanistan. There has been a pledge of 12 billion over 4 years. And Canada has been in one of the forefront countries in wanting to, as part of this demonstration for support. However, it's also very clear that the international community is imposing, this comes with conditionality.
Yeah.
And that conditionality is a really key lever. And that will apply to whoever is in the government. If it's Taliban partly part of the government, it's the, what we call now the republic, but in a government.
But will the conditions will be imposed? They will be, the conditions are linked to the financial support and go on. What if they are ignored thereafter? Is that the worry? Is that the worry that if the Taliban get more of the share of the pie, that these conditions will just be slowly eroded? Or I mean, I heard you speak before that you think there's been enough change so that it's going to be hard to go completely backwards. That's what you think?
Well, what I think is that I believe that a government now, whoever is in the government wants to be successful. You want to be recognized by the international community. You want, without international support, without that assistance, the reality is that any government will fail. In that case, you will lose the confidence of the population. So this is a really important lever. And I think that the way in which it is monitored and the way in which it is then brought, I think this is a new, we have talked before about conditionality, but there is, I think, a will of the international community, which has been accepted at the conference. And so I think that is, there is a shift. And perhaps two quick things, the role of civil society. I mean, I would recommend to those who are interested in coming up to speed about Afghanistan right now, is to read the political communique at the end of the Geneva conference. I think it sets out the rights that are not negotiable as far as the Afghan government and the international community is concerned.
So let's bring in Mozhdah and Komin on this, and let's talk a little bit about Mozhdah, does that reassure you, or did you see a change when you were doing your talk show, did you see a change in the way in which women or even men were thinking about these issues? Oh, we can't hear you. I think we can't hear you, Mozhdah. Are you on mute? Is that? No. Well, we'll have to fix that. Let me go to Komin, and then let's try to fix your mic thing, Mozhdah. Komin, what about you? Have you ever thought about going back to Afghanistan yourself?
Not really.
You don't have no family left there.
I have families, but I was really young when my family left, and I never. I had to. Never created a bond with. So I had some questions for Nurjehan, if that's possible.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So Aga Khan foundations operate in many different countries. Based on your experience working in different countries, what lessons have you learned in other places that could be replicated in Afghanistan to promote human rights?
I think that's a really good question. And I think that we have learned a number of things as the Aga Khan Development Network. And I would say that many of the international development agencies have learned this. And I think there are a few key ones. One is that for development to be successful and to be sustainable and has to be inclusive. And so that is very clear. And if you have inclusive development, then that will respect the dignity and the human rights of everyone. I think that's key. And if that happens, you inevitably find that conflict among groups starts to be reduced. We have seen that in the context of northern Pakistan, where the Aga Khan Development Network was very active and is active for a number of years. The second is that it has to be focused at a community level. Very important that the people who are the most affected and the community level, that these decisions and the work is not done only in national capitals. And engaging with the community, building institutional capacity, building community and community development. And I would say number 3 is multiple inputs. That is a lesson that has been learned throughout in development. Not just a single intervention. It is the integrated approach across a holistic approach that deals with, which responds to, and that builds resilience. We've seen that. There's so many examples of that. And so those would be at least among the 3 important things.
I want to get to Mozhdah then, because I am really intrigued about whether the experience of being a talk show hostess who was in transforming society in a way, whether you saw it, whether you felt that there was change happening just because you were asking these questions.
Absolutely, yes. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can. That's good.
Oh, okay. Yes, I actually felt it. I saw it right from the very beginning, and it was the most exciting, most amazing experience of my lifetime, because, you know, I worked up to that point not knowing, and a lot of people were very doubtful of what I was trying to do. And I think it was just me being young and naive and very optimistic and thinking that I could make a change and make a difference. I don't know if I would have the same mind frame now as I did back then. So I'm glad that, you know, I did it when I did it at that time. But when I first started the talk show, I was actually invited to Afghanistan to host Afghanistan's Got Talent. This new TV station, One TV, was just launching, and they wanted to launch big. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to have Afghanistan's Got Talent. And we're going to have the host. Well, I had already done music, so people knew me through my music. Yep. And so they said, we're going to have Mozhdah host it. So I'm like, all right. I get there, and we're sitting at the conference table, and my mom's like, have you heard of Oprah Winfrey? And of course, she hands him a whole DVD pack, and she goes, here. So she hands it to the producers and the directors, and she goes, well, I have homework for you. You go home, you watch these DVDs, and you come back tomorrow, you tell me what you think of this woman. And she's like, we need an Oprah style show in Afghanistan because of all the war and everything that's going on. She goes, my daughter left her safety and her friends and her freedom and all, you know, her amazing life in Canada to come here. And she's like, I don't want it to be wasted. I want it to be I want it to be worthwhile, and I wanted to actually have an impact on the Afghan people in Afghanistan. And so they went home, they watched this DVD, came back the next morning, so excited, going, who is this woman? She's incredible. And that was it. They completely forgot about Afghanistan's Got Talent, totally pushed it to the side. They're like, we'll get to this when we get to this. Let's do an Oprah style show. And of course, we had the production manager and the CEO of the TV. They were American and they were British. And so, of course, they knew who Oprah was. And they kept telling me, listen, Mozhdah, you're in Afghanistan. You're not going to get a completely Oprah-style show. No one's going to come to participate as audience members. Nobody's going to talk about their issues on television. They don't even discuss these topics like at home within the family, let alone, you know, on air, on TV. And so they put all these restrictions on me, and they said, don't expect to have a successful Oprah style show. And I remember I was not expecting an audience, and they put like 35 seats, and they were hoping that at least, you know, the 35 people would come and fill the seats, and 250 people showed up on the first shoot day. And women were standing up. When I was asking the audience questions, women were standing up and speaking about their own issues and what happened to them, using themselves as an example. This was the first episode. After the first episode, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because I remember what happened. It was like an overnight, you know, just success. And everybody was talking about this show. And
which year was that? Which year was that?
So we called it the Mozhdah Show, kind of like the Oprah Show. The Mozhdah Show. We
but
really
which year? You know. I want to know what happened after, but which year are we talking about when you started this, so that we can, you know, connect to maybe the transformation that allows what Nurjehan was talking about. So that was about.
That's when everything was happening, like 2009 to 2012, 2013. I remember they were very strict about my headscarf. They were like, it has to be a full headscarf, specific, you know, rules when it came to my outfits. By 2010, 2011, they were not as strict anymore. And I was actually going on stage wearing less and less, and, you know, just less covered up. And I saw that transition. And then I saw women, while I was filming the show, coming to me and saying and like Komin said, he brought up a very, very important issue with child. There's like, you know, 90% or more children in Afghanistan get abused in one form or another, or all, you know, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, or all of the above. And so my father said, it's very important for you to start talking about this. And so we started with child abuse, then we went into domestic abuse, and then we went into, you know, just kind of taking it one step at a time. And I remember women coming to me and saying, we drove all the way from this province or that province, and they were giving me hugs and saying, my husband doesn't beat our children anymore because of your show. And of course, we had a Dr. Phil on there. His name was Dr. Zaman Rajabi, and he was educated in the States. And He was a psychiatrist, and I would ask him questions, and he would basically just, talk about how children are being abused by their family members or, adults, and then how you can actually talk to a kid, and they'll understand it. And so we had actors acting out skits. So because we couldn't have actual families come and talk about their problems, we had actors playing out, the dad chasing the kid around the room, and he would be chasing him around the stage, and we'd all have a laugh. And then Zaman Rajabi would be like, okay, but this is how you should be doing it, because this impacts, this is so, it makes such a difference in how the child grows up, and it makes all the difference how you deal with children of this age. And and then of course the domestic violence, and then I even talked about divorce, or young women who were burning themselves in trying to commit suicide to get out of a bad relationship or an abusive relationship. And this haunted me to the core. And I talked about how it's more important to take care of your family members rather than worry about what others think, because in Afghanistan society now, it's just so important what other people think. And I was just trying to, bring that change. And so the progress that Nurjehan is talking about, the number of women back in the workforce, the number of girls in school right now, there's been so much progress. And my being nervous is just, I don't want it to go back. Like you said, Nathalie, like it just, that's the part that makes me nervous, is that the Taliban might not actually keep their promise of allowing women to continue to progress and thrive. So this is what makes me nervous.
One of the big issue in women's activism and women's rights movement is we need to speak to the women, because they need to be empowered to ask for what they need and what they deserve. But we also need some time to speak to men. So what's your reactions to that, Mozhdah? Was that something that you were obviously trying to speak to the fathers so that they would understand how to, parent children without chasing them around a room? But what was the makeup of your audience, and do you think that you reached some men?
Actually, my main goal was to reach the men. I'm so glad that you brought this up, Nathalie, because when we were talking, my father's he's a huge feminist, and he believes in women's equality, women's rights, and he's heavily involved, and so invested and involved, I could say. And so, I grew up under his influence. And here is an Afghan man who wants women's equality, and it really upsets him that they're not, that they don't even have basic human rights, especially during the Taliban. So I grew up with that. And while I was getting advised, or his advice during the show, he's like, you need to focus on the men, because first of all, the men are, they rule the household. And so he said, they're the ones holding the remote control. They're the ones controlling what the family is going to watch. And you don't want to go in there and talk about, and just right away talk about domestic violence and women's rights, and, just getting aggressively into that topic. So he said, you have to get into their hearts before you start getting into their minds. And that's exactly what I did. So my show catered a lot to the men of the family, so that they could continue allowing their entire families to watch and not feel threatened by me. And so this would, and then I gradually started talking about, talking about the relationship between the man and the woman, and how it would affect the children, and then the child abuse and all of it, kind of relating it and connecting it. And at the same time, we had 5 segments. So we would include music, a live musical performance by a famous singer that we would invite to the show, or I would perform. And then we would have the skits, which were really funny and entertaining. Then we would have game shows in one segment where, two people would compete to win, and we had sponsors, so we would have a washing machine and we'd have all these fancy things to give away. So we were trying to keep everybody involved, and I could see through my audience that actually came, were present in the studio. I could see toddlers to grandparents, everybody. It was such a family show, and I felt like we had done it, we did it. And so just to have the men be as interested in watching the show as women and young people, it was just really amazing to see. And of course, my song, Afghan Girl, when I was performing that in concerts, I could see the men tearing up we're getting more emotional than women. And that really, like when I was seeing these men getting emotional with the words and these lyrics, I would get extra emotional as well. So yes, I feel like, I feel like I was successful to a point trying to reach out to the men.
That's good. So, and let's bring Komin here. If you have other questions for Nurjehan or Mozhdah, it's fine. But I wanted to say, so you're the only man on this show tonight. What about your family, the family that is still in Afghanistan and the family that moved to Canada? Was that because of wanting more equality or wanting to escape the lack of freedom? Do you see yourself and do you see the men in your family as being feminist or wanting to ensure women's rights?
Yes, my family left Afghanistan because they wanted for us to have opportunity in the future. And even in Tajikistan, it was the future was uncertain for us. And yes, in my family, my father is I wouldn't say he would be a feminist, but he recognizes equality of both men and women. And yes, my parents did everything to take us out of Afghanistan, and also to leave Tajikistan and go to somewhere better that we could have a better future. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting to think about the role of the diaspora in what's going on in Afghanistan now, and whether is there a role? How does it play out? Do you have any advice for Afghan that are in Canada or elsewhere that are looking at the situation, Nurjehan?
I have, I think Afghan Canadians and Afghans who are in different places around the world are following the developments in Afghanistan very closely. I think it's evident they are. Many of them right now, most of them right now are holding back on returning right now because it's still, as Mozhdah has explained, and I think we all know that it's still fragile. And this generates the Afghan Canadians, many of them are trying to also establish themselves, getting their children educated, and this is not necessarily the right time for them. But I know, I think you can talk to most Afghans will tell you that they care about their country, that they would like to be able to support. We've got examples right here, and that the time will come. And I don't know, as somebody who has seen the situation of expulsion and in other contexts, I'm thinking of Uganda, for example. We've seen that it takes a whole cycle, a whole generation to be able to be sufficiently comfortable, established, and the situation in that country also changed enough or stabilize. I can't even say sometimes that it's a transformation, but it stabilizes enough that you feel ready to go. And I'm hopeful of that. We see that in other contexts, so I think that would happen. And I mean, I don't want to leave the idea that I think it's all
No.
apple pie, as we say, because we know that it's going to be a long haul, long journey. This conflict has been going on for a long time. It's not going to be resolved instantly or even quickly. It is going to be from a protracted conflict. It is going to take time to build confidence, to build trust, and then to be able to agree. I mean, it takes what? It's taken 4 months now to be able to come to a point where there is even a discussion around an agenda. But is that different? No. I mean, I think you can look at other contexts where it's taken long time to get to these points. Much longer. Colombia, I mean, I think we know. So I guess staying the course, supporting the resilience and of Afghans and the impulse for peace is where we can all come in and support development at the same time. Because I think if there is no development, hopes for a sustainable peace are very, very low.
Mozhdah, I want to talk to you about being famous and being someone that Afghans are proud of, that do you think that in a way contributes as well to that a certain feeling of empowerment toward peace? Like, we are a country that produces wonderful talent, there's sort of pride in it. Did you feel that? Do you think that people would have told you that? No?
I get so much support and love from my fellow Afghans, like the Afghan diaspora around the world, Afghans inside Afghanistan. It's overwhelming. I don't even know how to explain the feeling, but it is just amazing. I personally don't care much for fame, and that wasn't my intention at all. But just seeing that support, seeing that every time I want to back away from it, I can't, because I feel like I owe my Afghans, just something to continue doing this, because they're just, they're looking forward to the next thing. And I feel like I'm letting them down if I don't give them that. But yeah, in terms of like
cool.
making it.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I think it was pretty cool to go and perform at the White House for International Women's Day. So I think, we certainly were very proud of that, as probably the entire Afghan diaspora around the world. But so you have this sense of commitment to the journey. We've talked a little bit about that. There's still uncertainty as to what you will do next. Anything that you can share?
I feel like so much that I wanted to do happened already, and I'm always going to, I'm going to continue dedicating my life and my time to women's rights, not just in Afghanistan, but, in general. And I'm always going to just have the most important things in the world, like taking care of children and, speaking on behalf of children out there. Like Komin said, that the majority of the population in Afghanistan are very young, and we need to take care of the young. We need to take care of these new generations, because these are the generations who are going to make that difference and bring that positive change in Afghanistan. It's very crucial, very important for us to focus on the new generations, especially young girls, and to just empower young women, empower young boys. And I want to dedicate my life to that. And I feel like I have not done enough of that, and my music, and like I said, my platform, and opportunities like this help me further be able to do that on a larger scale. But I'm going to continue doing that in one form or another. It's always going to be my main goal to help the girls, women, just be a voice for them.
So you see yourself then on the world stage. It's not just Afghanistan. I mean, I think the Afghan struggle for women is representative. And I think we're getting to the end a little bit where I'd like to bring this. What do you want Canadians to know and to remember from this conversation on International Human Rights Day today in 2020? So let's start with you, Komin. What would you want our audience to remember?
Yes, I mentioned children in Afghanistan, but with the pandemic raging across the world, there are many children in the poorest parts of the world who have stopped going to school, and there are reports that these children may never go back to school, even if the pandemic is subsided, because of the economic hardships brought on by the pandemic. And the COVID-19 pandemic is a tragedy, but it's also an opportunity. And the pandemic reminds us of how vulnerable we are and how bound we are by one humanity. And it's therefore the responsibility of each of us to extend and to promote human rights to the places and to the people who are deprived of these basic rights.
Well, I am so impressed by your advocacy for children. It's fabulous to hear this. You know, there's we might want to get another dialogue on children's rights. You know, that would be there's one question here. Don't you guys think that the power vacuum created by the withdrawal of troops would trigger a tug of war between the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS, which could lead to a triple jeopardy for the respect of human rights? Nurjehan, do you want to take this one?
Well, I think that's a very important question. That's been the concern with respect to the original agreement in February between the US and the Taliban and the pace of withdrawal of the troops. But I think we are beginning to see a situation where the withdrawal of NATO and the American troops is going to be, as we understand, they're going to be related to the reduction in violence. So I think that's going to be important. The presence, the agreement has actually says that the Taliban will not allow Afghan soil to be used by other protagonists against the US and allies and the forces. What I think it did not say adequately that it would that should also apply to Afghans.
So that's an issue there about the ISIS then turning against the Afghan government. Is that it?
Well, it's possible. We don't really know the extent of the presence of ISIS. ISIS we don't know when ISIS claims responsibility, whether it's truly ISIS. But we do know generally, I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm not on the ground now, but we do know from reports that we see that there is that presence. And vacuum is not only in terms of troops. Vacuum is when there is disagreement, when the population doesn't get any services, that creates a vacuum. So poverty, lack of all of those things that we've talked about today also creates a vacuum. So you need a strong central, you need a government. Thank goodness we can't say that Afghanistan is in a state of civil war because there is a central government. What I think we need to do is and they are doing a lot, the international community is supporting. And so I think that the risks are there, but my sense is that with the change in the government, in the changes that are happening in the South, we may see a recalibration. Is the way I would put it. We may see a recalibration of the approach.
Mm-hmm. Any concluding comment, Nurjehan, about what you want people to think about on International Women's Day 2020?
We haven't touched today on the topic of COVID. This is really interesting, isn't it? This conversation. But we do know that this year, International Human Rights Day, which you started with, has the theme this year is the impact of COVID on our world, and I would bring that also on Afghanistan as well. It's also on the failures that is exposed and exploited by the pandemic. And the third thing that I was very struck by is that the centrality of human rights in building back better. That as we build back better, that human rights be placed at the center. So I think that would be an important aspect for me. And we are running out of time. Let other colleagues speak.
That's it. Well, I just wanted to say it's been interesting to think about building the human rights framework for public health. The idea of today, earlier during the day, we had a discussion on the human rights framing of what universities should do post-COVID, which was, lots of challenges there. But I want to let Mozhdah finish our program here about what's her message on International Human Rights Day 2020. Mozhdah.
I would like to say that as a Canadian, I am grateful every single day for the opportunities, for the freedoms and the security that we have here, and I don't take any of it for granted. Being from two places gives me the privilege of knowing how lucky I am, and I want other Canadians to also understand how lucky they are. When Nurjehan brought up COVID, it's a very important point. I look at what's happening in other countries, and my family is scattered everywhere because of the war. So I have family in Iran, I have family in, all of those regions. And during COVID, they had no government assistance. They lost their jobs. I know of, other Afghan families who have fled the war and are in situations. I know of Afghan families inside Afghanistan who have lost their jobs, who weren't able to work. A teacher in my dad's city became a beggar for the first time because he lost his job as a teacher. And that broke my heart. And so every penny that I've made, I've sent back to Afghanistan and the surrounding regions, because I just feel like I don't need it as much as they do. And so it just gave me I already knew how lucky I was, but COVID and everything that happened, us, the way that we're taken care of by our government and by each other, like the love that we have for each other, like I said, the security that we have, it's so important to know that. It's so important for us to really appreciate that and give back to those in need, and to be aware of other places in the world who are truly, where people are truly suffering.
Well, thank you. Such words of wisdom here about appreciating what we have, but also I think that the way in which resilience will be built out of COVID. I think we will learn a lot from that experience, and it has exposed many fractures within societies throughout the world. So we will be talking a lot about that in years to come. So I want to thank you. It was such an honor. It's so wonderful to have you, Mozhdah, to be with us. I hope that you come to Massey someday.
The honor is all mine. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure.
And Komin, it's so nice to see you across the yard here at Massey. It's wonderful to have you as part of the community in Nurjehan. Always a great pleasure to listen to your great wisdom. So thank you. I want to thank the staff, Oprah Winfrey and Matt Glenfield, for putting this show together. And we hope to see you next week.